So since the Industrial Revolution, or maybe even before that, companies have chased the latest management styles and business processes, all with an eye on improving their operational efficiency, operational effectiveness, staying ahead of their competition. And even if we think about now into the digital age, companies are still doing that, right? We're still chasing the buzzwords, the exciting things. We want to be data driven, we want to be digital first, and we need to digitally transform. And now we talk about being AI powered and AI driven. And I'll say, I put this on the slide. Actually, I hate the term. To me, again, I'm a data and AI architect, as you can see, but it implies that we're doing AI for AI's sake instead of doing AI to solve a business problem. So good morning, everyone. My name is Terence Frederick. I'm a Microsoft Technology Center data and AI architect. I'll explain what that is in a little bit. And today I want to focus on, I want to share with you guys some of the things I think companies and customers and even solution providers need to think about before they get into AI. And then time permitting, we'll get into a few use cases. What I'll add as I go into kind of what the MTC is generally I don't do slides in our customer engagements. I prefer discussion, dialogue. We do a lot of discovery. That's what makes us successful in the MTC. So I would say, don't feel like this is a college lecture and you guys need to listen to me for 30 minutes. I'd much rather not finish the slides while you guys talk to me than to get through the slides and then you guys are glazed over. So feel free to speak up. All right, so the MTC, for those of you who are not familiar with it, the Microsoft Technology Centers are a place, but they're also focused on, as you see here, people and process. So the Houston Technology Center is 750 town and country. Many of you may have been to it before. A lot of your customers have also been to it. But the idea is we bring customers in to a room like this or rooms like this, and we have different types of kind of deep, thorough engagements. The idea is for us to engage with the customers almost like a team would if they were at their own office in a workshop, but away from distractions. We have whiteboards and maybe Surface Hubs, and we're drawing architecture if it's a technical, bent for the audience, or if the audience happens to be what we like to call business decision makers, we'll gladly go through some design thinking, talk to them about their biggest business problems, their biggest business objectives, and then help them prioritize those things and think about, how they lay out a roadmap for their digital transformation, again, using buzzwords. So the focus of the presentation isn't this, but I really wanted to share this with you guys, especially for those of you who are, potential customers, or maybe you're already customers. So if you see something here, again, Ron will provide you the slides, and you think maybe your company could benefit from MTC engagements, feel free to either reach out to your Microsoft account manager, or if you don't know who that is, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn, and I'll point you in the right direction. So I just wanted to make sure I called that out. All right. So if you guys have been working in technology for, I don't know, more than 2 weeks, let's say any amount of time, you've probably seen something like this slide here. The continuum for analytics maturity. And although I'm not talking about analytics today, I think this applies to, AI or any other type of buzzword around digital transformation. I love the slide because it highlights kind of all of the potential steps on a journey, but I have some major concerns and issues with the slide. So customers, and dare I say even sometimes myself and Microsoft, fall into the trap of going after the sexy things on the right? Like we showed like these big bubbles to show the relative impact of each stage of the journey. And so people see it, and dare I say, C-suites and senior leaders see it, and they say, hey, go get me some of that big bubble on the right. Let's go do some machine learning models without having done any of the homework to get there, right? And so we in this room now, I see heads nodding, and I can't see you on the Zoom call, but we know that if you don't do the things on the left, then the things on the right will fall flat, and they will be a significant waste of your corporate assets, i.e. time, energy, money, staff, whatever. And we were talking even before the presentation. I used the analogy, which, I just thought of it on the fly. If you guys are sports fans, all the work is done in the gym, right? So it's on the left side. Like, that's where you're practicing. You don't show up at a game and then just do what we see them do on TV. They put a lot of time into their craft. And so, again, same thing for AI. So what I want to share today is maybe a few, I can't remember how many it is, but, let's say several enablers for what I think companies need to focus on to become a bit more AI driven, if you will. All right. So this slide, only going to cover 2 metrics. I love this slide for a number of reasons. I'm actually going to read it backwards from the way that they planned for it to be presented. So I'm going to start on the right. All right. So, we have estimates that by 2025, 175 zettabytes of data will be created annually. And I don't remember the exact number. I mean, you listen to podcasts and, some of it goes in one ear, not the other. But that's more data than was created, or dare I say captured, because the data existed whether we captured it or not. That's more than was captured from, the beginning of time up until through 2015, 2019. I don't know the exact number, but you get the point. We're creating massive amounts of data, and corporations across the globe are creating massive amounts of data. And so when you poll CEOs and CIOs and CTOs and, whatever C, 90% of corporations say that, data is an asset. It's strategic for us. We treat data like a corporate asset, all these different things. And when they say it, I can't help but laugh. It's like, I'm from Texas. It's like, bless your heart. Like they are serious. They mean it. But then, you hear them say it and you go, well, okay, if data is such an asset, answer these questions for me. And I won't go through these questions, but you guys have seen these questions before. It's like, oh, data is an asset to us. Okay, how much of it do you have? I don't know. I have to go talk to the team and figure out. Oh, that's fine. Who owns the data? Well, it's a corporate asset. No. But who owns the data? Who says what data should be captured and what data should not be captured? Who's the custodian for the data? What do you use the data for? When you have these PowerPoint presentations, like I'm giving you guys, do you ever ask them how they got the slide or the numbers, the metrics they show you? I mean, I just showed you guys some metrics and there were quotes. I don't know if you saw them, but, for all you know, I could have made those numbers up. And, so there's a number of questions that companies need to be asking themselves about data. And I don't know that maybe that they are. And so I would say first enabler, although this says data governance, I actually want to make it bigger than that. It's really a data strategy. And obviously Microsoft, sells all kinds of products. But I'll tell our customers, don't buy this product if you're not going to do the left side, right? Like, go do the work in the gym. This product will be useless to you if you don't go build a data strategy and think about how you're going to govern it and think about who's going to say what the right quality of that data is, so on and so forth. So I'll show a product that can help with this, but again, product doesn't matter if you don't do the other things I just said. So I'm not a sales guy, so that's why I want to put that out there. But then some other things on the right. So again, I like to focus on the discovery part because I'm usually the consumer of data. But sure, we've got to support the CISOs and the IT teams who really are trying to do their job to support the company and protect the company, right? So, what is my exposure? If you're in a business that has private data, are you keeping that private data private, or are you setting yourself up for lawsuits? Again, different types of businesses have different questions they should be asking themselves. But to me, this is like step 1. This is step 0, really. And I won't spend too much time on this slide, really. I think it's a good holistic view of what a corporation benefits from focusing on governance. And there, again, scratch out governance and just say data strategy, right? From a corporate perspective, not any particular persona, right? They need to be able to manage that 175 zettabytes per year growth across all companies of data. They need to be able to get from a place where engineering, or all 5 to 15 different engineering disciplines, and all sub-disciplines within geoscience, and all sub-disciplines within operations, and all sub-disciplines within commercial don't have their own version of the truth. because again, they're operating the same assets, so there can only be one truth. So right, thinking about that one, that's kind of been like my passion for the last 10 years. And then, we say increasing data agility. I think that's a bit of a buzzword too. Really, we're talking about letting, your end users, whether that's citizen developers, citizen analysts, actual, professional devs, data engineers, whoever, C-suites, management, whoever needs to consume data, let them get it quickly, right? Like I've had customers tell me, they read reports every morning for how production went the day before. And if they had seen some of that information, not at the C level, but at the first line supervisor, second line manager level, if they had seen that data, say every hour, they could have actually made an adjustment to save themselves some money the day before. So really all they're looking at is data that tells them you screwed up yesterday. And it doesn't tell them how they could improve going forward. And then lastly, we keep talking about industry regulations. Again, I've never worked in healthcare, but obviously HIPAA, like that's a big one. If you think about, financial services, obviously they're governed really stringently. I'd even say as we think about oil and gas, which is my background, as we get more into kind of focusing on sustainability and our carbon footprint and our methane emissions, we're not there yet, but I'm hoping and predicting we will be to a place where that type of data is governed the same way we govern some other things, because it's a really important problem to solve. All right, I'm gonna talk about Purview briefly. Again, not a product bitch, but the idea of Azure Purview, again, if you guys are using any Microsoft products, whether that's on-prem or in the cloud, the idea of this product is to help solve some of those problems. It's not a Band-Aid. It doesn't fix all problems. It doesn't do your master data management. There's a lot of things that aren't in the product yet. But the idea is to be able to survey your data estate, see what SQL servers you have out there, see what, technically, actually, it works with other cloud providers. So it's not a play to get you out of their clouds, but basically survey your data estate and start to figure out where your data is. And then run some rules to see if you accidentally expose social security numbers or credit card numbers. And if this were an MTC engagement, I would do a demo and actually show you guys kind of some mocked up scenarios of our data estate, and we survey it and kind of look for different things that we might need to use. So again, I'm not going to spend a lot of time there. Now, before I move into this next slide, I'll show it, but I'm going to pause because, like I said, I don't want this to be a lecture. So 30 seconds, I'll be quiet. If you guys have any thoughts, feel free.
I'll just say that you said that data is, to ask the question, is data an asset? Data is absolutely an asset, because if data were not an asset, the conversation involving ransomware would not exist. Just because data is an asset, what other asset is there that's causing this ransomware fiasco? Anyway.
Absolutely agree. And so just to kind of drive home the point a bit more, right? So we talk about assets. I mean, you guys are all familiar with assets and liabilities. If you ask a corporation how much money they have, could they answer? Would they have to work that hard to tell you how much, like what the balance sheet says? So if you know how many assets you have on your balance sheet, if this is an asset, big if, why can't you answer any of those questions? All right, so you know it should be an asset, but maybe you're not to the point where it's ingrained in the culture that it truly is. So just food for thought, moving on. All right, so another enabler, and again, not going through all that's on this slide, there's a lot that's in Azure AI, but the enabler here is actually understanding how to use kind of the right tools for the right problems, and then also the right tools for the right skill sets and the talent that you have in your teams. So a lot of people think about AI and they think, oh, I got to go hire these data science teams, but they don't have a data scientist at the company now. And how do you hire for something you don't understand? But you do have, some pretty sharp, business line users, if you will, who could maybe mock up some cool stuff using some of the low code and no code solutions. And again, this applies equally, whether it's Microsoft products or not. But there's a full suite. There's again, another continuum from, citizen developers at the top here, all the way to data scientists at the bottom. If you understand the portfolio a bit better, and in a broader sense, not the Microsoft sense, then you understand how you can leverage the different capabilities to solve your business problems. And so that's kind of incumbent on you guys as the leadership in your organizations to make sure you have at least a working knowledge of what's available, so that you can start to think, okay, so what will work in my company, right? Because everything here might not work at your company. All right. So this one is one I love. I'm actually a software engineer, by background, long time ago. And so in the software world, we talk about DevOps, and it took a while to get there, right? We used to have these build teams, and they build an awesome product, and then they throw it over the fence to these ops teams. And then they complain about how the build teams are idiots because they keep putting this stuff in production that doesn't work. And it was this huge fight. And so, over the last, I don't know how many, 5+ years, DevOps has been the idea to kind of bring those teams together and close the feedback loop, so that the team that's building is monitoring and operating it, and they can quickly see the effect they're having on production. And so if you think about ML, I mean, at the end of the day, it's just code. When you're building machine learning models, I don't know how many of you have actually trained models or coded anything up, but it's just code. It's different frameworks maybe, and it's different objectives, but it's code. So you should treat it as such. And so if you kind of think of the machine learning workflow, what a lot of companies who have gotten to the point where they're leveraging machine learning are doing today is, their data scientists will have to ask somebody for an extract of data, like, can you please dump out this data for me into CSV or something? And then they'll have that on their local machine, and then they'll ingest that into whatever ML environment they're using, or maybe onto their local machine, and they're using Python and some framework. And then they'll train a model, a bunch of ad hoc training. And then that model will be on their machine. Not really, like, they don't really have a good way to deploy these models. Maybe they're to the point where deploying it, but they don't have a way to keep track of what they've deployed or what they did to it. And so it's almost like where software was before version control. So we're 20 years behind us. Well, why don't we catch ML up? There's no reason why they should go 20 years before they figure out version control and dependency management. And so the idea of ML ops is being able to control your ML workflow from end to end and automate it a bit, so that you kind of get quicker feedback. And then also, it's the fewer times a human touches a process, the fewer chances for errors to be introduced, right? So you build a pipeline, and so now they work on the left end, and then it comes out the right end, and then you can, you assume that everything that came out was an artifact of what you did on the training, and not so much you copied and pasted wrong on step 2, 3, 4, or 5. So something to think about. Again, this is all just for awareness. All right, so this one is, this is an enabler that I don't think many people really, they don't see it as an enabler. At Microsoft, we see it as a key part of all AI work we do, both internally as well as what we support for customers, right? So in order for you to truly be AI driven or AI powered, you need to think about, the underlying effects or ramifications of things that you're coding and the things that you're building and deploying. All right, so AI has zero biases. AI's biases are only based on the biases of the data that you gave it or the biases of the human training it. So, we have 6 pillars that we focus on in Microsoft. And again, I'm not going to run through all of them. You guys can read here, and there's a link in the presentation if you want to read more. But, thinking about the idea of fairness, you have banks that are using models to determine whether they should give someone a loan. Like, how dangerous is it if your AI model is biased in how it determines whether it should give loans or not? You got Tesla kind of leading the pack, but we're trying to have cars drive themselves now on a large scale. So how reliable and safe are your algorithms? Because one snafu and your company's done. right? If you cost lives with your AI models. So just things to think about and kind of getting through, privacy and security, same as data, inclusiveness, transparency of what you're doing, and then ultimately accountability, right? We need to be accountable for the things that we put out into production. And when we're B2C companies and B2B companies, into our customers' hands. Am I doing on time, Victor? Cool. I want to save some time for the use cases. All right, so I'm not going to go through all this. The idea of this slide was to just, I wasn't sure what the industries of the different people that would be here were. And so I love this slide because, the point is there's some business objective. Like everything really should start with a business objective. If you don't have a business objective, then hang up the AI and please stop doing this and call me when you have a business objective. But what I used to tell my coworkers when I was an enterprise architect was that your corporate strategy should drive your capability strategy, which would then drive what work we put into the program or product portfolio, right? And so at the end of the day, there's different ways that you could leverage AI and ML, whether you're a retail company, no matter what you are, you sell something. So there's that. You got to deal with your customers, how well you interact with your customers, how well you serve them, how well you predict what they're going to need. You think about things like, Office 365. I don't know if you guys have used it. At my former company, I never used it. And then I started typing emails at Microsoft and I was like, why is it recommending things for me? Sometimes they're actually pretty good. Sometimes I'm like, that's terrible. I would never write that. Right. But that's all part of customer service, right? Making everybody's life a little bit easier. And then just, on the far right one that is near and dear to my heart, the last 2 years have been tough for the oil and gas industry. They've been tough for all industries, but especially for the oil and gas industry. So if you think about how you connect with your staff, people are quitting left and right because they can get better jobs. It would be better for you as senior leaders to understand their sentiments 6 months before they start looking, as opposed to 2 weeks after they got the offer. So it's just something to think about there. All right, so I'm going to actually jump into use cases. This one is kind of a cool way to visualize. I'm not actually going to use the words here. I'm going to use the way I think about AI and development and really pretty much anything. So there's really, to me, there's two big buckets, right? So you can improve your operational efficiency and operational effectiveness, which is really what everybody chases after. And then you can also improve your business model. So you have improving the operating model and improving the business model. And a lot of this tends to focus on the operating model. How can we do things more effectively and more efficiently and be more productive? But for some of your companies, I think you mentioned, at Siemens in the sustainability space, there's new business models opening up as we think about everyone wanting to monitor their impact on the environment. And so it's like, how can we leverage the models and the data coming off all the sensors we've already deployed with our customers and provide them insights that we can sell to them. If we're being honest, like that's what companies do, right? And so to me, it's opening up a new space of business models for people to leverage. All right, so with the last couple of minutes, I'll just share a couple kind of cool use cases. I'm not going to talk about all of these. So the BP, the supply forecasting, is one that I think a lot of oil and gas companies are doing. So Microsoft has, the website is customers.microsoft.com. You can go see stories about other customers and figure out what they're doing. And so it's kind of a cool way for you to get competitive intelligence without having to know anyone necessarily. So you can go there and you can search for your industry or search for like a competitor's name and see if something shows up. And so I love to do that with customers because, a lot of customers, they come to me like it's a secret. It's like, hey, can you tell me what the competitors in the space are doing? It's like nudge, nudge, wink, wink. It's like, it's public. Like they publish an article. I can give you a whole site about it. So, if you think about supply forecasting and really supply forecasting, demand forecasting, production forecasting, all the super majors, the majors, the mid majors, the small mom and pops are trying to figure out how to better align their production with what the global demand for energy, oil and gas will be. And so there are really some cool stories there. And then the one on the right, Scandinavian Airlines, even though this talks about fraud detection, if you go and look at the article, Scandinavian Airlines actually, had tens maybe hundreds of potential use cases, right? So they said, hey, we're gonna leverage AI and ML to improve our operating model. So let's drum up ideas. Let's kind of crowdsource ideas. And so they get all these ideas, and then they kind of condense it to 5 that they wanted to pursue. So, they had their fraud detection, which is one we highlight around their loyalty program. So I think the numbers are, there's 2 million Scandinavians that fly, more than 5 times a year, or more than 5 times year. And we're defining that as frequent flyers. They account for something like 60 or 70% of revenue. All right. And because they account for so much, you obviously have these frequent flyer rewards programs, and the reward programs can get pretty lucrative. And so they realized they were losing money because people were taking advantage of that program. And, you guys have been to the websites like the Travel Points guy, all these different flying sites, and they tell you how to game the system. And, airlines lose money when we game the system. And so, they don't want to hold things back from their customers, but they want to make sure that the way they're using the program is the way the program is meant to be. And so they've saved significant money with that. Another thing that they've done, they've built models for that you can see in the article, is trying to maximize their occupancy. I mean, you guys know the story, right? Like, airlines don't want to fly empty planes. They don't want to fly a plane with 15 people. Like, they want to fly a plane with all of us shoulder to shoulder, elbow to elbow, if possible, all overhead compartments full and no room for any more luggage. And so they've built models to help them, make sure that they're optimizing their utilization. All right, and then the last one. So this one is this is one I want to highlight the most because, again, near and dear to my heart. It kind of meets the intersection of my oil and gas background. It's my desire to focus on sustainability, as well as, software development and AI and, everything under the sun. So this is, like, to me, one of my favorite use cases. And this is actually a number of our customers that are working together with Microsoft, and, we'll call it a consortium, if you will. I don't know what it is officially. Right. But if you think about mid and West Texas, you think about New Mexico, you think about all the big shale plays. I mean, we're producing a lot of gas, whether it's, associated or dry gas. And there are significant methane emissions challenges, whether that's intended through, venting and flaring, or whether it's, fugitive emissions. And so what we've been working on is ways to try to capture the impact capture the volume of those emissions, and then figure out ways to rectify those. And so the data that goes into this, so bringing this back to AI, the data that goes into this type of problem is a broad range of data. So we've got aerial surveys, we've got IoT sensors, real-time sensor data, and everything in between. And the reason it becomes an AI problem is that the kind of the temporal and spatial granularity, if you will, of that data is all different. Right? So you take a survey that you only get twice a month. You take real-time data that you get all the time. You take, kind of some snapshot hand cams that maybe you get once a week, and other things. And how do you align all of this data, integrate it, and then start to predict where your largest fugitive emissions are to start? And so again, there's links in here. You guys can go look at the story. This is still under development. It's called Project Astra. So that's public information. You guys can go look it up. But it's ExxonMobil, Microsoft, Pioneer, I think Schlumberger, not sure others. But there are a number of other initiatives like this where we're all kind of partnering, bringing technology community with the oil and gas community to solve what we all know to be a big problem, whether we want to acknowledge it, publicly or not. And so with that, Victor, I think that is my last slide. Here's some last things. So, you guys will have the presentation. You can go look at links. Again, my name is Terence Frederick. Feel free to reach out to me, connect with me on LinkedIn. If you guys have any questions about the MTC or your use cases or any of that, I'm here for you.
Awesome. Nice job.